You are listening to the Manument Podcast. My name is Casey, and I'm here with my buddy Glenn Johnson, investment advisor and founder of Jabez Financial right here in the Uncasville area. In every episode, he is here to break down today's biggest retirement worries and headlines for us. First, if you've been wondering whether your retirement plan is really built to last, today is the perfect time for you to find out. 860-288-9977 is how you can reach us. And Glenn has set aside 5 spots on his calendar for a complimentary introductory conversation exclusively for our radio listeners today. Glenn, can you kind of tell us real quick what that introductory conversation looks like?
Absolutely. When people give us a call to schedule time to come in for a conversation, what we want to do is I want to sit down and get the opportunity to hear your story, find out where you're coming from, and discover how is it that you got to where you are. And when we have a conversation about where you came from, we get a little bit of understanding of, well, that's important, because it got you to where you are. But then we can have a conversation about where you want to go. And your past is important because it got you to where you are. But it's not nearly as important as how you see your future. Because how you see your future affects your attitude, and your attitude affects what you do, which in turn affects your future. So when you come in for a conversation, we have the opportunity to get to know one another. I get to hear your story, and then we can have a conversation, a dialogue around what you'd really like to accomplish.
You do not want to miss out on this opportunity. We are opening our phone lines right now. 860-288-9977 is that number for you to call. You can sit down with Glenn directly in his office. He's located right here in Uncasville, just down the street from Mohegan Sun. And together, you can figure out how he can best help you. Spots are limited, though, so I encourage you to take advantage now while we still have them. That number for you again, 860-288-9977. Or if online's better for you, you can always visit us at jabezfinancial.com, and that is Jabez, J-A-B, easy. All right, Glenn, let's get into some retirement talk, shall we?
Great.
All right, so earlier this week, a friend of mine sent me an Instagram post that talked about various fears or phobias. One is called Plutophobia. This struck me, which is the fear of money. So, of course, I went down a rabbit hole and I read that this can manifest during retirement in the fear of spending your savings. And what's one way to overcome that? Well, the article talked about one tool that helps increase certainty. So what do you think they're talking about here, Glenn?
Well, a couple things. When they're talking about fear of money or fear of anything, 90% of it comes from a lack of understanding. And so when people have a fear of running out of money, and so therefore when there's a problem, somebody comes up with a product to solve it, because everything created was created to solve a problem. And so insurance companies come out with annuities and say, okay, well, we're going to use this annuity, and now we can assure people that they're never going to run out of income. And that's true, and that works. However, we want to figure out, well, why is it that we have the fear of running out of money in the first place? Is it based in reality, or is it just based on perceived fears and fear of lack of understanding or not knowing? And when we have any particular type of fear, especially fears revolving around running out of money, what people will instinctively do is they'll overcompensate. They'll overcompensate by saying, okay, well, I'm afraid of this, so now I'm going to make these major decisions because I'm just afraid of running out of money. No, like annuities have their place, but we want to talk about and discover why the attraction to them. And when we're using financial tools appropriately, now we can be confident that we're going to get the results that we want. So this is where we want to have a conversation around discovering, well, number one, do you really, are the fears you have of running out of money, are they based in reality? Or is it just fear of lack of understanding as to why, of what's going to happen?
I mean, sometimes I think it just takes that one moment or strategy to help somebody break through those worries. So have you ever seen a client make that leap, Glenn, moving past the fear of spending in retirement, and what made the difference for them?
Well, it's really financial education. The more you understand of what's happening, how things work, and then you can you can say with confidence, okay, I have the right allocation for me in this season of life and in these market conditions. And when you know that you've got what's best for you, those fears tend to dissipate. But those relentless fears that people have, it's a thought habit. And those negative thought habits that perpetuate fear need to go away. That comes not just from overcompensating and putting too much of your money into an annuity, although, like I said, they have their place. But it comes from increasing our education. And that's really what we're all about. I think about when I was younger, I love doing a lot of work outside. And so every time, it seemed as though every time I went to go do some work outside, I put on a pair of gloves and they've got holes in the fingers. And it was so frustrating. And I'd keep digging for another pair of gloves, and everything I had holes in them. Until I finally said, that's it. I went to the store and I bought maybe 24 pairs of work gloves. And I'm like, okay, now I've got them.
Yes.
So I overcompensated for it. I solved the problem. But when people have those fears, we don't want to make long-term decisions for short-term circumstances. But as we get the financial education we need, then those fears, like I said, education cures fear.
What you don't want to do is let that fear keep you from enjoying the very retirement that you worked decades to build. So if you're wondering whether you're being too conservative with your spending, or if you just want to know what is safe to spend without jeopardizing your future, Glenn is here to help. So give us a call. 860-288-9977 is that number for you. Claim a spot on Glenn's calendar for an introductory conversation. You can sit down with him right there in his office here in Uncasville. This is complimentary, by the way, and you guys can walk through your situation and your goals, and you can work together on how Glenn can best serve you. That number for you again, 860-288-9977. One more time, write it down, 860-288-9977, or you can always visit us online. We are at jabezfinancial.com. All right, Glenn, we're in October now, but September was a big month for the Fed, but were we paying too much attention to all of the headlines about the Fed and interest rates? Here is what economist Judy Shelton told CNBC after the Fed recently cut rates by a quarter point. Take a listen.
The Fed has gotten too powerful, it's too prominent in financial markets, and it's way too political. It's ludicrous for the Federal Reserve to be deliberately imposing restrictive interest rates, which just prevents access to capital for the private sector. I don't think that's the appropriate role of the central bank.
So, Glenn, what risks do retirees face if they overreact to Fed headlines like moving too much money in or out of stocks and bonds? Talk to us about this.
Just because one person overreacts doesn't mean the next needs to. And the Fed has a habit of overreacting. It's almost like in their nature. We think about going back to 2008 and when Ben Bernanke was the chairman of the Fed and how he responded to the 2008 crash. See, he did his thesis on the Great Depression. And having learned about quantitative easing, that's when it was implemented after 2008, where the Fed started injecting cash into the market. And it worked with QE1. And then they went through QE2 and QE3. And they just kept on injecting more and more cash into the market and were overcompensating. And in the process, it just moved the country further and further into debt. Yes, it was needed initially, but they didn't need to perpetuate it. And so now the Fed, instead of just controlling interest rates, they have morphed into something that they're not just trying to control interest rates, they're trying to have a tremendous amount of influence over the whole economy. And she's absolutely correct by saying they've become more of a political movement as well. So since 2009, the market it's been on steroids, basically. Like I said, when they had the QE1, where they first did that first release of cash into the market, it's kind of like needing steroids. Like you've got too much inflammation in your body and immediately you need some steroids to bring the inflammation down. But the Fed has been keeping the economy living on steroids since 2009, whether they were injecting cash into the market after the 2008 crash or they kicked up their spending after COVID and were literally mailing people checks. So you can't live on steroids. It doesn't end well. And so when we have an economy that is dependent upon those steroid injections of cash coming into it, something's got to give.
Every time rates change, it feels like the world is holding its breath and wondering what they should do next. But as we know, in retirement, Glenn, reacting too quickly can sometimes do way more harm than good. So what do you think's a better strategy than chasing headlines, especially for somebody who's retired and they're worried about preserving their income?
Well, this is where we have to find out what your plan is. When you first discover or are able to articulate, how is it that you want to live? Design your ideal day. Figure out how much that's going to cost and say, okay, this is the plan. This is the lifestyle I want to live. Then you can construct a plan that will afford you to live that way. Too much of our decisions, if we're making all of our decisions purely based upon world headlines, we're really subjecting our own futures to the consequences of somebody else's decision. And we don't have control over what the Fed is making for decisions. We have very limited influence over the kinds of decisions coming out of Congress, but we have total authority over the decisions that we make in our own home. And so if we can design the life we want to live and then construct a plan that has enough flexibility to make adjustments along the way, and we can stay committed to the course, can stay committed to the result we want to achieve for ourselves, all while maintaining the flexibility to make adjustments when the Fed decides to lower rates, increase rates, inject cash into the market. It starts with assuming responsibilities for our own home. And that's where we can have a lot of influence over creating our own success. See, these are the kinds of conversations I thoroughly enjoy having with my clients when they come in. It's great to have a conversation about what's going on in the world and then dwindle that down to what are some concrete decisions we can make for ourselves. So I invite you to give us a call at 860-288-9977 and pick a time to come in for a conversation. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions about what's going on in the world. And then we can have a dialogue about how to make some of the best decisions you can to make your future better. I'm right here in Uncasville, right down the street from Mohegan Sun. So give us a call at 860-288-9977. And let's get together and give me a chance to hear your story.
That's right. I want you to take advantage of this opportunity. Glenn is so easy to talk to. You can sit down with him face to face right there in his office. There will be no judgment and no obligation either. This is just a conversation, and we are standing by right now to take your call and get you on the calendar. 860-288-9977 is how you do it. One more time, 860-288-9977. Or you can always head over to our website, jabezfinancial.com, and you can get started with us online. You have found the Manument Radio Show. Every week, I am joined by Glenn Johnson, financial advisor and founder of Jabez Financial right here in Uncasville. And Glenn, we've seen numbers lately that show the labor market is softening. Listen to what happened to a project manager in his late 50s who calls himself Mike B.
Let me tell you how bad the job market is right now. I got laid off about 36 days ago. Probably 200 applications in. Out of that, probably 25 rejection letters. I signed up at Walmart for a job. Signed with my grocery store for a job. No interviews, no contacts. Out of all the applications I put in, I've had 2 interviews. Been ghosted probably 15 times. That's how bad it is. I've been aged out 36 days. This is the longest I've ever been without a job ever in my life. 23 years in the military, master's degree, bachelor's, tons of experience. Can't find anything.
So, Glenn, that's pretty bleak sounding. Let's talk about this. If a client came to you saying they're worried about losing their job so close to retirement, how do you help them prepare for a possible transition ahead of when they plan for it?
You know, a couple of things that when we hear stories like this, people tend to seem to think that, well, this kind of story happens to the other guy, but I'm okay. But from our perspective, the other guy is you. And so these situations are real. And when the Fed raises rates so businesses stop expanding, the reason they do that is for this. This is their objective. When the Fed raises rates, businesses stop expanding. The only other way for them to increase their profit is to lay people off. And so they lay people off, and then, like this gentleman's situation, eventually he'll cut back on spending, and then demand for goods and services come down and inflation will come down. So this is all part of the cycle. This is all part of the plan. So it's not like it's some accident that people have a harder time finding work. So when they ask a financial advisor, okay, well, what do I do about this? What kind of situation do I get in? What do I do now? This is the kind of question that basically stumps all financial advisors, because they just go back to, well, you could have done this, you should have done that, you could have set more money aside, you should have been doing this. And they start playing the hindsight is 2020 game. And okay, how helpful is that? Okay, yes, things could have been different. I could have done things differently. But the real question is, what do I do now? How do I get out of this situation now? And that's a conversation I strongly welcome, because there is a way to get out of it. But it starts with knowing that with every adversity you're going through, it can be used for your benefit that will make you stronger and better off because of it. Keep in mind that we are our own life's project. And these adversities and these struggles can be used for our benefit to get us better. So when we find ourselves in that kind of situation where we feel like our back is up against the wall and we don't have any other options, we do have other options. We're never left with no good decision. A lot of times people find themselves in this situation and say, well, I had to do this. I had to completely drain my 401k. I had to do this or that. And that's only because they didn't know what else to do. So sometimes we have to humble ourselves, or life's consequences will humble us. But either way, we have to figure out how to get the information that we need to get things better. The very definition of wisdom is skill at living. And so we have to either pursue wisdom ourselves or evaluate the decisions we've made. But let's go back to the situation that this guy's found himself in. And I start with just know that you'll come out stronger. Know that this will be used for your benefit. And then we've got to figure out a way to stop the bleeding. What I mean by stop the bleeding is when we're in a real financial predicament, we have to figure out, well, what do I need to do immediately so that things don't get worse? Kind of like when they inject steroids into the economy by printing a bunch of cash. Yes, you can do that one time. You don't make a habit of it. So we figure out a plan of what we need to do to stop the bleeding immediately, and then construct a strategy that will get us to where you want to be. So before we can do that, we define how you want to live, what's really important to you. What are your governing values? What are the things in life that you would lay your life down for? What's really important? And sometimes those times of intense adversity and hardship will allow us to reflect enough to be able to define what really is important to us. And once we know that, now we can construct a plan that will really move us towards taking care of the things that are really important to us. And at the end of the day, we find ourselves like, wow, you know what? Everything did work out. Everything has been taken care of, and I'm better off for it. So we want to use these adversities to inspire us to make better decisions. Only a fool counsels himself. And the wisest people out there surround themselves with people that can speak into their lives and give them the knowledge and insight and wisdom they need to be able to make better decisions. And this is why when you have the opportunity to give us a call and come into the office and have a conversation, whether you're at a high or at a low, like I said, the wisest people seek counsel not only when things are terrible, but also they seek counsel when they're living in abundance, when they have a tremendous amount of success, because now we have even greater influence and there's even greater need for advisors. That's why presidents surround themselves with advisors. And when we're going through struggle, we need to be able to have the relationships with people that care more about our success than our friendship, and be able to speak those truths that we need to hear to make better decisions.
Oh, that's a great way of looking at it, Glenn. I mean, unfortunately, things like this happen. You're working, you've got a plan, and then out of nowhere, you're faced with an early retirement. And this is where having somebody like Glenn in your corner is going to make all the difference for you. He's helped so many clients navigate unexpected retirement. So if you're in that situation, or you're just, worried that you could be one day, I encourage you to go ahead, give us a call, 860-288-9977. We can get you on the calendar for that introductory conversation with Glenn. You can actually sit down with him in his office. He's located right here in Uncasville, and there's no cost. There's no obligation associated with this. This is just a conversation to help you get on track. So again, that number, 860-288-9977. One more time, let's make sure that you got it down. 860-288-9977, or visit us online at jabezfinancial.com and we will get you scheduled. That's Jabez, Jabez. All right, Glenn, the stock market has been on quite a run lately, and the fact that it's being fueled by just a handful of stocks has some investors concerned that a major correction could be brewing. So, Glenn wanted to ask, do you agree? And what should we remember when the stock market takes a dive and doesn't mean another opportunity?
Of course, the market is going to have ups and downs. I remember my first week into the industry, I asked one of my mentors, I said, okay, so is the market going to go up or is it going to go down now? He said, well, yes. All right. He said,
I love it.
It's going to go up, it's going to go down. And because why? Because the market has ups and downs. And eventually, no matter when you get into the market, if you wait long enough, eventually it will end up. So during these times, since 2009, we've been in a tremendous secular bull market. Yes, we've had some ups and downs along the way, but it's still been going up and up and up and up. So how come? Now, when we think about this next downturn, will this next downturn be just another bump in the road in an ever-climbing market? Or will it be a turning point? See, the Fed's involvement in injecting so much cash into the market, so much for so long, and we know it has to, our guts are telling us that it has to come to an end at some point. It's as though they've had the attitude of, oh, no, not yet. We're not going to let this market go down yet. Here, have some more cash. We'll lower interest rates. We'll do whatever we need to do just to keep it climbing, but it's not healthy. We know that the market's overdue for it. And the reason for that is we've got all the writings on the wall. All the red flags are there. We look at the price per earnings ratio across the S&P 500. The Shriller PE ratio actually crossed 40 to 1 the other day. I mean, the market's way overpriced. We look at the Buffett indicator, where we compare our GDP to the market. That's up over 200%, where it needs to be closer to maybe somewhere between 70 to 125. We've got things like the Magnificent Seven that have just run away with the market. So we've got the biggest companies out there that have continued to get wealthier and wealthier. Yet the Russell 2000 has been struggling for the last 4 years. All of the writing's on the wall. So is this next downturn, is it a turning point? I'm inclined to say it very well could be. So unless we have some safeguards in place, we have to be smart about it, because the real risk doesn't come after the market's collapsed or is in free fall. The risk comes before the fall, and that's when it needs to get addressed. So instead of looking back a year from now and saying, oh boy, I wish I got out. I wish I could have, should have, would have, didn't, right? Now's the time to address those concerns and be smart about it going forward. So if you could give us a call at 860-288-9977 and pick a time to come in for a conversation, we'll figure out, is it the right season in your life? Is it the right season economically for you to make some adjustments? Because what the allocations and the investments that you've had over the last 15, 16 years, chances are they've worked, and they've worked well. But is that the case going forward? So give us a call and come in. We'll have a conversation about it. I'd love to hear your perspectives and what you think. And together, I'm certain that we'll come up with some decisions that will make your future a lot better.
I want you to take this as your sign if you've been thinking about incorporating the help of a financial professional or getting a second opinion on your plan. Glenn is ready to sit down with you and talk through your options. He is eager to help, and we're standing by right now to take your call so we can get you on the calendar. That number for you again, 860-288-9977. That is 860-288-9977, or you can head to jabezfinancial.com anytime and you can get connected that way. All right, Glenn, we've got a couple minutes left, so I wanted to talk to you about the fact that many Americans are not confident they will be able to retire. In fact, 21% in a recent poll said it would take a miracle. So I wanted to ask you, Glenn, do you have clients who came in saying this to you? And what was their mood like after they sat down with you and you guys worked out a retirement plan together?
Prior to picking up the phone and calling a financial advisor, sometimes it can be a little daunting, especially if we haven't really dove into this, or especially if you don't have a real deep understanding of how economics works. It's almost like recognizing the need that, well, I need to go see the dentist. It's been a couple of decades. And well, I hear it. I've seen it. Mm-hmm. So we haven't gone to the dentist in a long time. And so we pick up the phone, we call. We don't know what we're going to find, but we have some ideas. We know there's some problems. There just has to be. Maybe I'm not in excruciating pain right now, but we know something's brewing. And let's make that call before we end up with a massive toothache and in need of a root canal. This is where, so when we think about addressing what seems to be a overwhelming task of understanding our finances, we have to allow ourselves to be bold enough to make a phone call and start a conversation. And you don't have to have the concerns of not being able to understand how things work. I like to put it as when we talk about any particular financial topic, when we're face to face, I kind of have like my Sesame Street version of things. So when we go through why things are the way they are, or the steps people need to take to what to do next, you can trust that when you leave, you will have a much deeper understanding of what's going on financially, personally, worldwide, with the economy. We can have these conversations in such a way where you'll actually walk out of here feeling, oh, I finally get it. This makes sense. And when we have that understanding, it's very empowering. And to think of all these people that think that their guts are telling them that they just don't have enough money to retire. Boy, sometimes they come and say, I need a miracle. Well, recognizing that miracles happen. I mean, you're a living, breathing miracle yourself. So Absolutely. Sometimes we can expect a miracle, but we've got to do something. I like to say that God doesn't respond to suffering, because if he did, there wouldn't be any. He responds to action. We've got to do something so that our efforts can be blessed. And sometimes that's picking up the phone and starting a conversation. And let's take a look at this. Maybe you'll find out that things aren't as bad as you thought.
That's a great way to look at it. Make the call, get that appointment on the calendar, get those conversations started. Incorporate the help of a professional to guide you through this journey that is retirement. It is going to make all the difference for you, I promise. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Manument Podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts so that you never miss an episode, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Investment advisory services offered through Jabez Financial, LLC, a registered investment advisor firm. Registration is not an endorsement by securities regulators. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities, offered through Glenn Johnson, Connecticut Insurance, license number 4628409. The firms are separate entities. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company and are not offered by Jabez Financial, LLC. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. Jabez Financial, LLC is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if Jabez Financial, LLC is licensed in your state, please call 860-390-0093.